Wow, what a night. I just
What a day.
I just got a new pair of glasses.
All right.
And whenever I get a new pair of glasses, it's kind of a signal that a new level of vision is coming in. That's clearer and more precise. And I've been kind of blown away by this new insight that's coming in about this newly discovered celestial Eris. Everybody know who Eris is?
No.
This newly discovered celestial beyond the orbit of Pluto. She was discovered in 2005, and she represents to me the next octave beyond Pluto.
How do you spell that?
E-R-I-S.
Okay, I remember that.
Yeah. Her original name, before she got officially named, was Xena, the warrior princess, which I personally relate to far more than Eris. So whenever a new celestial is discovered, it signals that humanity as a whole is given the opportunity to arise to a more conscious state of being. Eris has always been there, but just a few amongst us humans have been able to access her consciousness. Once a celestial is discovered and declared publicly, then she becomes available to humanity as a whole. So we as astrologers have been diving deeply into this new archetype or state of being. And I recently, just in the last few days, she was showing me the word fusion, thermonuclear fusion. There's a difference between nuclear fission and nuclear fusion. Is anyone aware of the difference between those two? We got a few scientists here. Pluto is associated with nuclear fission. When when radioactive particles connect with one another at a certain level, a threshold, because they are throwing off atoms from their own atomic structure, because they're in a naturally unstable state. If two of them get together, two or more, they can actually begin a chain reaction. And we call it an atomic or nuclear fission event. So whenever Pluto is present in your chart, if certain events transpire that begin triggering a chain reaction, it destabilizes your entire world. You start feeling like you're radioactive. And there's a certain kind of chaos that goes along with that then reorganizes itself into a new model of yourself and the world around you. Uranus himself, I connect with radioactivity, so you can feel quite charged and electrified with Uranus. But it doesn't reach critical mass until Pluto gets involved. Then everything in your life seems to explode in a hail of chaos that reorganizes your entire way of being and drives you to the core. So how is fusion different than fission? You guys want to explain that?
Well, it just consolidates, it fuses.
Yeah. With a fission event, you're exploding outwards. Yeah. And fissionable material involves complex atoms, like uranium-235. There's a great complexity. Certain events in the world reach a level of complexity where they begin to cause a chain reaction that changes everything. Whereas with a fissionable event, it involves the simplest of atomic structures. The sun itself is a fission event. It's what drives the sun and all stars. There's a fusing of singular elements, hydrogen and helium, that releases a tremendous amount of energy. So in a fusion event, you're driven inward. Eris is connected with that process. I just saw the movie A Star is Born, and that kind of synopsizes Eris, the Eris event, where you're fused into a new level of creativity where the star within you begins to burn bright. So the inside of the sun, the internal environment of the sun, is so tremendously hot, and there's so much pressure involved. It creates what's called plasma inside the sun. It's a high level. It's a high state of excitable hydrogen atoms that are flying around at a tremendous rate of speed. Now, I'm still kind of like new to all this, so I'm struggling a little bit with the language. So, but these are archives that you can then translate into your own personal experience. And these protons are stripped of their electrons, and the proton is the essential core of the atom, your essential self. The electrons that spin around it are its effect on the environment. So, in this tremendous cauldron of heat and pressure, you're stripped down to your essential self, the proton. And these protons are flying around at such tremendous speed, every once in a while they will collide with one another and create a new element. And so helium transforms into, hydrogen transforms into helium. And these events then create a whole new form of creativity. It brings new things into being that had not existed before. Now there are super events of this fusion, transformation or alchemy, that translate into a supernova. When the star is big enough and hot enough, these fusion events actually implode the star and it explodes as a supernova. And that's the most extreme example of a fusion event. And then new elements are brought into being by the supernova that had not existed before, of a more complex nature. Now, I went back into history to locate the last Pluto-Eris conjunction, which to me represents the synodic cycle of this supernova event that made a new phase of human evolution possible. It occurred in December of 1756 with a powerful stellium in Sagittarius. The Sun and Mars conjunct in Sagittarius. See if I can pull it up here. And this Pluto-Eris conjunction occurred at 18.5 degrees of Sagittarius. Mars was at 25 degrees of Sagittarius, Mercury at 14, and the galactic center was very close to the Mars-Pluto-Eris conjunction. So this was a massive supernova event that has set in motion events that shortly after that created the United States of America. And the United States of America has 13 degrees Sagittarius rising with this Pluto-Eris conjunction in its first house. The reason I'm taking some time to create the bigger picture here is because the current astrological influences are so deeply personal and so challenging that we can easily collapse into the moment and lose perspective about the greater picture that's unfolding. Have a lot of you been feeling that with this emphasis on the sign of Cancer opposite the Saturn-Pluto conjunction? Also T-squared by, guess who? Eris. So many of you have been really challenged with your emotional sobriety. And this will continue, especially peaking by the middle of July with
Mercury retrograde.
Yeah, Mercury goes retrograde, but the July event of the lunar eclipse is the capstone of this particular opportunity to find emotional sobriety. The eclipse occurs on July 16th with the moon eclipsing Saturn, eclipsing Pluto, and then opposing the sun. So this is a particularly powerful illumination point of how well we've been able to deepen our emotional sobriety, where we feel at home on planet Earth. When we're most challenged and tested is a time where we can most likely feel that we're not really welcomed here by the community around us, by our intimate family, by those who are we look to for close emotional support. So during times like these, it's important to know that you have the power always to be your own mother, to really take the time to nurture and honor yourself, be kind to yourself, and support yourself as an important and valuable member of the community and the world at large. How many of you have been feeling a little tested in your close relationships, particularly with family, those you consider family and have looked to for emotional support? The Capricorn Saturn-Pluto opposition says that it's time for the adults to enter the room, to step up to your adult nature, take command of your own reality, and be the adult in the room. So those of you who have been looking for support from others to lean on, the Cancer aspect, may have been thrown back on your own personal resources to rise to your full potential and realize that you, by nature, are a manifester. You have the capacity, connected to the spirit, to manifest your own reality and not be a planet revolving around someone else's sun. So issues of belonging in the community, of personal survival, protection, of safety, the moon, have all been an issue that we've all been personally experiencing during this time. If not us personally, then we may have found others who are close to us going through a test or trial in that area of life. So there comes a point where you realize that with a T-square to Eris, that a whole new model of consciousness is required in order to step up to the next level of engagement with the world around you. It offers new opportunities. It's in Aries, so this is groundbreaking new states of consciousness and ways of being in the world that emerge out of this particular family versus career challenge that's arising, where you're no longer trapped in the horizontal, but you are diving deeply within to bring forth a new aspect of creative power within yourself. I connect Eris because of this fusion event to the solar logos, the power that generates the consciousness of the sun. So when there is a supernova event, it creates a giant black hole. And the black hole is so powerful and intensely attractive as a center of gravity that an entire galaxy of stars is created around it. So when you have connected at that level with the solar logos within you, if there has been a supernova event of illumination within your being, you may find that you become the center of gravity around which others then can organize their new way of being in the world that advances the entire evolution of the human race. There are a few who have achieved that state of being that we still look to as icons, as markers of human evolution. So who you can ask yourself, who am I to achieve that level of beingness that would have an entire galaxy of stars revolving around me? Well, each one of us has that potential. So have any of you been feeling the supernovas exploding inside of you? We have one here, so we're the other side revolving around it. So to highlight this process, we have certain really powerful transit windows here that will be markers for the clarity with which we have achieved that personal emotional sobriety. Well, one good news is that Mars was out of bounds for May and the early part of June, has just gone back inbounds, which means that the craziness has begun to tone down somewhat, and we're starting to feel like we can reintegrate with the world around us. That occurred on Wednesday.
When does it leave Cancer?
And Mars leaves Cancer on July 1st. But before that time, as most of you know, we have the full moon approaching on Sunday night, basically, exact at 1:31 a.m. Pacific Daylight Time on Monday. So we have the pressure of that full moon building now through early Monday morning. The moon is still currently in Scorpio and will enter Sagittarius tomorrow morning at 2:03 a.m. So the last couple of days have been a really powerful cathartic time for us to connect with what I've mentioned before, the black hole within us that creates a tremendous amount of inward magnetic pull. So many of us have been feeling like, whoa, we've got to dive deep, and we're still in that, the last part of that experience until tomorrow morning.
When's the full moon again?
The full moon is early Monday morning. So it's basically all Sunday night. These oppositions, the full moon is in opposition to the sun, create an opportunity for full illumination.
It's in opposition to what?
The sun and moon are opposite one another. That's what causes the full moon.
Okay.
Yeah. It's another aspect of a synodic cycle. A synodic cycle is created when two planets combine with one another and start a new cycle. So what's the most important synodic cycle in your personal lives?
Well, for me, this past week it was,
No, it's a specific thing. It's your birthday.
birthday.
Yeah. So each time you have your birthday, that's a synodic cycle. The sun returns back to its original position and starts a new cycle, a new day, a new year for you. That's the most obvious example of a synodic cycle. What's the next most obvious example of a synodic cycle? New moon, exactly. So we're all aware of new moons. That's a synodic cycle. It starts a cycle that lasts about a month. And then the Eris Pluto is also a synodic cycle that is a supernova event that sets in motion an entire historical phase that lasts most likely about 500 years. The next most important synodic cycle that we are now experiencing unfolding is, Glenn probably knows about this, the Pluto-Neptune cycle, right? The Pluto,
It's one of the larger ones.
yeah, it's the next larger cycle. Pluto combining with Neptune is the Phoenix cycle. It's a 500-year cycle of human evolution. This occurred in 1892-93 in early Gemini. So anyone who has planets around 8 or 9 degrees of Gemini is sensitive to that synodic awakening. And what's interesting, a dramatic example of that is that Uranus is at 8 degrees of Gemini in the United States chart, which almost prophesied that the United States of America would begin to become prominent as an inventive influence on the world at the end of the 18th and 19th century, when that Uranus-Neptune conjunction was exactly on its Declaration of Independence natal Uranus. And another dramatic example of that was the atomic explosions in Hiroshima and Nagasaki. Astrologers have come to call the 8-degree Gemini point the atomic degree because Mars was at 8 or 9 degrees of Gemini when those bombs were dropped. So these are demonstrations of these sensitivity points being very active throughout their entire phase. Okay. So we are about to enter the sextile phase of this current 500-year cycle. It'll complete through the 2020s. So highlights for this particular opportunity to perfect emotional sobriety will be occurring. It starts today, actually, with Mars opposing Saturn, and then opposing Pluto on the 19th. The 19th of June is a particularly powerful day because the moon will be opposition to Mars, and then eclipse Pluto as Mars opposes Pluto later that evening. The moon eclipses Saturn on the 18th. Mercury conjuncts Mars on the 18th. Mercury will be opposing Pluto also on the 19th. So we see how the opposition point is like a full moon. These oppositions don't just occur for that one particular day. They bring the entire synodic cycle to full illuminated perspective. So what's been going on since Mars entered Cancer mid-May, and then Mercury entered Cancer early this month, will come into full illuminated perspective, usually catalyzed by an opposing event that illuminates what you've been dealing with emotionally since the middle of last month. So these are very powerful signature days for the full moon cycle of these particular celestials to come into full view. The opposition also is very, there's a difference between a planet 1 minute before the opposition and then 1 minute after. It's like with a full moon. We have what in astrology was called midpoints. So it's at the midpoint or the halfway point between particular planets that the energy is released. So when you have two planets approaching in opposition, the midpoint's on one side of the chart, but at the moment of exact opposition, the midpoint flips to its opposite. So there's a flip that occurs energetically, and this is experienced especially with full moons. Right up to the very minute of the full moon, the pressure builds as an internal process, an internal illumination process. At the moment of the full moon, it flips to the opposite, and you begin feeling propelled outward to share what you achieved and realized within as a result of that particular cycle with others around you.
You mean the midpoint is
Yeah, the midpoint at
here,
the full moon.
and then
then
when it reaches, it goes up.
It flips over to the other side. So in the astrological wheel, if anyone's familiar with the wheel, the 4 quarters of the wheel, the midpoints will always fall either in the first quarter or the fourth quarter of the wheel, making the left side of the chart very important in terms of our self-expression. The left side of the chart governs our expressing ourselves, and the midpoint is where the power is released that gives us the opportunity to express what we've been experiencing internally. But the first half is personal expression, the first quarter. The second half, after the opposition, is the fourth quarter of really sharing it out into the community at large. So there's quite a dramatic shift. So with these oppositions on the 19th, we may feel that energetic shift of an internal process having come to full illumination, that now then we can actively and more consciously begin to share and talk about with others around us. But we're still on a personal journey until the actual opposition.
So it would be
So the 19th
Aries
is,
and Libra?
yeah, Mercury, see, the opposition is between Mercury and Mars being in Cancer, opposite Saturn and Pluto in Capricorn. So the midpoints would fall initially in Aries, and then once the opposition is achieved, they flip to the opposite sign of Libra,
Degrees.
which makes it quite dramatic. Saturn and Pluto are near conjunct from about 18 to 22 degrees of Capricorn. So it'd be 18 to 22 degrees of Libra and Aries, and Eris is at 23 degrees of Aries. So we can see how Eris is more active in the application or applying phase to the opposition. And then she begins to express outward through around 23 degrees of Libra, which happens to be the area that another newly discovered celestial is currently inhabiting, Haumea. She's the Hawaiian goddess of creation. If you want to feel into Haumea, she just imagine a volcano erupting, Kilauea, creating new land. There's a fiery emotional process, but that brings new land into being. And it's the aloha itself. So, in a sense, it's like once we go through the supernova of individual creative power with Eris and Aries as the midpoint, and then that new level of creative fire within us connecting with the solar logos of our own being, we then reach outward through Libra to form new, more conscious and loving relationships, aloha, to express the aloha of our being. But this creates a grand square of energies, and grand squares are the most powerful manifesting combinations possible in astrology. So there's a tremendous amount of pressure involved with them to really manifest who you are. There's a certain pressure that pushes you so deeply and profoundly that you can't any longer just go along with the program. How many of you are feeling a little pushed to stand up for yourself? Yeah, find the adult within you, take a stand, command that solar creative fire within you, and become a brilliant star, or possibly even a supernova in the lives of others around you. So this is quite a dramatic week approaching here. And then on the 21st, the summer solstice, the sun enters Cancer, and we have another Cancerian element added to the already intensified Cancer environment of Mercury and Mars in Cancer. That begins to shift, as was mentioned earlier, with, before I go on to that, Mars does square Eris on the 23rd, which brings the entire process I've been discussing to a highlight. On July 1st, we have Mars entering Leo. On the day before the solar eclipse in Cancer at 10.5 degrees, the solar eclipse occurs at 12:16 p.m. on Tuesday the 2nd. And that is a new synodic cycle, because the solar eclipse is always what? A new moon, right? Yeah, it's a new moon. It's just a super powerful new moon. And instead of just ruling like a new moon of the following month, it can rule pretty much until the next eclipse, 6 months, or possibly even, as Glenn was mentioning, 18 months. And with all this Cancer emphasis, I mean, Mercury and Venus will always be in Cancer around the same time also. But what makes it even more powerful now is because the Mars is also in Cancer. And it's opposing the Saturn-Pluto, almost conjunct in Capricorn, He squared by Eris. So we always go through these familial crises in the beginning of summer, where families gather and get together and, for better or worse, have the opportunity to resolve their conflicts. But this particular window of the Cancerian emphasis is even more intensified than usual. So we are in a position to find out who our true family is, and where we can really put weight down on our feeling of being truly nurtured and protected, as a conscious and awakened mother would do. Okay? And so the period starting July 2nd through the culmination, as I mentioned earlier, of the lunar eclipse on the 16th of July is a period of fated turning points within our own communities and families, giving us the opportunity to locate with those with whom we are truly meant to work with in the future, who have high integrity, who found the adult within themselves, who keep their agreements, who don't make their agreements lightly, who follow through on their commitments to be a part of the continuing journey of accomplishment in your life. So many of you have been finding that you can't just get away with making squirrely agreements right now, that you're being held to account by what you say to others, what you commit to with others, and how you carry through on the commitments you make. This is a signature for me of an adult soul. Every soul has a different level of maturity. One of the distinguishing factors of an adult soul is they've been around the block so many times, they know what they're capable of. They have that experiential background to assess what they're capable and also what they're not capable of doing. So when you get an agreement with an adult soul, you can put your weight down on it because they know their own capacity and they can follow through on what they've committed to. Whereas a younger soul will either underestimate or overestimate themselves because they lack the soul history to really attest to or discern what their true capacities really are. So how many of you have a lot of young souls in your life that you're just kind of like losing patience with? Wait a minute, you said you were going to so-and-so, and I'm sorry, I didn't know this and that, and the other thing would happen, right? Yeah. But when you're dealing with an older soul, if there is in fact a change of plan, they will contact you and let you know that an unexpected event occurred, and make peace with you about rearranging their agreement. Whereas a younger soul won't even remember the original agreement. It's just like like Donald Trump in office. Like, I never said that. It's right on film. It's like that's when you know you're dealing with a younger soul. But those of us who now are emerging into our adult nature are being able to discern the difference more clearly, so that we're not constantly disappointed when younger souls don't follow through on what they have intended. We just realize that we're, for the most part, dealing with little kids who are looking for mom and dad. And we won't feel like the expectation of them won't be as great any longer. Anyone dealing with broken agreements here? The ability to keep agreements? Okay. Well, this is going to be quite emphasized through 2020 and beyond with this Capricorn stellium approaching.
And the stellium's in July, not June.
The Capricorn stellium is mostly in 2020, next year. So we have the straddling the lunar eclipse on the 16th of July. The Sun opposes Saturn. On the 9th of July, Mercury conjuncts Mars on the 8th of July. Mercury turns retrograde on the 7th of July. So we're seeing that whole second week of July being the beginning of an inward turn, with highlighted events again. The Sun, whenever the Sun's involved, is a great illumination of purpose. And the Sun will then oppose Pluto on the 14th of July, kind of highlighting and illuminating the internal process that we've been experiencing since starting today through the middle of July. And then by the lunar eclipse then on the 16th, everything is brought to a punctuation point of illumination. And from the 16th onward, then we begin to feel like we've gone through a personal journey of initiation that will then begin to make more sense in terms of how we are to project ourselves out into the world around us from that point onward. And then by July 22nd, when the Sun enters Leo, we'll start feeling like, whoa, they're really starting to come out of the woods. And it's time to really begin to feel the joy, the radiance, the exuberance of our nature beginning to emerge from a very quite challenging emotional crisis or emotional catharsis. So this is quite the month and a half we have with this month coming up here that will, by the 22nd of July, leave us feeling like, wow, it's time to party. Yeah. Yeah. So any questions or anything else to add? Anyone else would like to add anything to what I've said or questions you have? Go ahead.
Yeah, I'm pondering on the thought where you said about souls with their age.
Mhm.
So one part of me, correct me if I'm wrong, one part of me hears the timeline in Earth language, and then the souls that have come onto this planet that are fresh from what's in the heavens. Who's to say which soul is really the oldest or the youngest at that point? There's this time concept of what Earth people think
Yeah.
is an old or young soul, but when you're up there, and you come down here, maybe those souls are the freshest.
Yeah. A soul can be very old in one area
Okay, so
and very young in another.
Okay.
But you'll sense a certain gravity with an older soul because you sense that they have a lot of experience in that area, not just in this lifetime, but in many others. They have a long soul history
Earth.
of experiential knowledge, of wisdom. Our wisdom is gained by direct experience on Earth or in other worlds. But older souls have had, deep and profound experiences that they can call upon as wisdom because they've gone through the experience itself and gleaned the opportunity or gift inherent in those experiences. And you can tell that person's been there because they'll speak with great authority. The only true authority you have is the authority of your own personal experience and the wisdom you gleaned from that. So you through your own personal experience, you build internal authority. And older souls have a great amount of that inner authority because they've been there. They have the experience to speak from and the wisdom gleaned from it. So you may feel very young, like a child in one sense, because you lack experience in your soul history to relate to. It's all new to you. But in another sense, you're very old and you have a great deal of wisdom to share with others from your personal journey.
The question is, why do we have to experience things on Earth that are negative to make us a wiser soul?
Because it's an opportunity to perfect your love. Upstairs, we don't get that same opportunity. It's all rainbows, and unicorns. So you want to test your love. You want to refine your love, perfect it. Come down to earth and have a few Donald Trumps show up in your life, and to see how deeply you're connected to the will or commitment to love your way through all adversity. And that's one of the main reasons I've realized. I kept asking that question: why would I choose to come down here amongst these crazy humans? There must be an opportunity here, a gift. But I'm not seeing, and I kept asking that question until they started showing me the process of perfecting and honing the love that I am through adversity that I don't experience in those higher dimensions, particularly in relationship to being an immortal body. Like, you want to add even more drama to it, choose to be an immortal body, and all that goes with that, to give you special opportunity to perfect your love and your consciousness and not be thrown off balance by the challenges of the mortal world. And each one of you will come to your own understanding of that question yourselves. That's what was shown to me.
And then this is where you're helping us with the planets to help us work with the forces of the planets to help us on the Earth here.
Yeah, these celestial combinations offer opportunities. And the timing of the opportunity then can alert us to the nature of what shows up in our lives, the person or events, that gives us the heads up on the nature of the opportunity. We can be a little more conscious about it. Mm-hmm.
I wanted to have a deeper understanding. You were referring to ERIS, Eris?
Eris, yeah.
Does that correlate to a known goddess or entity or history?
Yeah, it's
where does that name come from?
Eris was, I believe, the son of the daughter of Ares.
Daughter of Ares?
Yeah, the god of what we call war. But those old archetypes, they're all Roman. They were created in the patriarchal era. All those old archetypes that as some have been assigned to planets, are like being kind of fired right now. They're being evolved. So I know a lot of time is spent researching the archetypes, the Roman archetypes of the particular celestial in order to gain a deeper understanding of its nature. But that's actually, for me, is personally, is evolving beyond those Roman archetypes into a new, more conscious way of being. And that's why I relate to Eris more so as Xena than I do as Xena, the Xena, the warrior princess. Yeah, it was a famous television show. She was Xena, the warrior princess.
So you're saying they correlate to you?
Xena,
Right, but you're
Xena.
saying they correlate and,
Yeah, I relate to Eris more so as Xena,
okay.
which was, what they were originally calling her.
Would you say that she's some sort of Shakti Shiva consort with Pluto to moderate the Plutonian energy to fusion
Yeah.
type energy?
Moderate
The destructor to the creator?
Yeah, a supernova of energy that just brings in entirely new elements into being. It's interesting that if you want to kind of have a living example of that, Nancy Pelosi has her sun conjunct Eris. She's a living incarnation of that Erisian energy. Okay, she's not to be messed with. I also have the sun very closely with a degree conjunct Eris, so I'm really familiar with that fusion event in my life where I was just so completely pressured to bring a new level of creativity forth that a supernova event occurred inside of me where all this illumination starts coming in. Yeah. So the way to get a clear understanding of these archetypes or a celestial placement in your chart is to watch transits when they occur over that point, because then life itself will demonstrate to you the nature of that energy. It'll happen once a month, or the moon will go over your Eris once a month, sun once a year. And if you're conscious and clear about those transit windows, you can say, I want to know more about a conscious relationship to this Erisian energy. And those days or those windows will be your opportunity to do so by watching how your energy shifts and what opportunities are offered by the world around you.
Do you remember a time, I think it was around, it's been so long now on my journey, the harmonic convergence, I think was in 87?
I was here.
Yeah, I was here too.
Yeah, and Glenn was here too.
What was interesting to me was trying to understand the dynamics of the orbits around the sun. And Pluto came inside the orbit of Uranus.
Neptune.
Mhm. And that was something in my understanding of science, astronomy, astrology, I've been scratching my head ever since, wondering if that wasn't the sign in the heavens of this big transformation of consciousness we're going on. And I'm still trying to place that back. Now you're bringing this interesting perspective about something I heard you said it was 95 when this planetoid was discovered.
2005.
2005. And so now, I think there's other planets beyond Pluto that are identifying, the planetoids.
Yeah, there are many of them that have already been found.
It's like the never-ending story
Yeah.
into the future when you're trying to still get your mind spun around
Right.
and stabilized about what you've gone through the past 20
Yeah.
years. And I love your expression, emotional maturity or stabilization adulthood.
Yeah.
And for me this week was really good of feeling like, man, I just bumped up to a whole level of integration, and it had to do with the Sun, Jupiter, Uranus in a T-square, with the Moon swinging in opposition to Jupiter, and on Wednesday, that came together, that Grand Cross, and I just go,
Yeah.
I'm here.
Yeah, 2005, I was going to mention this. What happened to the significance in 2005? This affected the entire planet.
2005?
Facebook.
Facebook, really? Wow.
Yeah. Facebook. And Aries rules the face. So it started, it gave us the opportunity. I mean, there's a lot of negative things we could say about Facebook. But a new power began to be handed over to the human race to make it possible for us to show up all over the world and meet people from God knows where and show ourselves.
And can I emphasize
You know,
the
as a shining
integrity
light,
of
you
your
know.
photograph, your
Yeah.
retinal scan, your thumbprint,
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
all those biometrics,
Yeah.
so that you cannot hide in the dark and commit fraud on.
Right, exactly. It's like coming out into the open and showing yourself, but not just in your local community any longer, but across the world. So Facebook has had a major impact on the human race and its consciousness. There's always the dark side to it, of course. But as far as a transforming element, a magical tool, Facebook is just been mind-blowing in terms of how we just take it for granted now, but imagine the world without Facebook. It's a completely different world. Yeah. So elements like that are coming into being. And as you were saying, these new gods and goddesses are being introduced because of this discovery of these newly found celestials. And I've mentioned this before in my talks. This is like another signal that we're done with the old Roman gods. We've run out of them.
Wow. Wow.
And we have no old Roman gods placed onto these newly discovered celestials any longer. So we're inviting these other gods, Varuna, Haumea, Sedna, these indigenous gods from around the world to join the circle, finally. And it's expanding our consciousness in ways that we hadn't ever imagined before. So it's a really fascinating time. It really began to accelerate at the turn of the millennium with the discovery of Varuna. And that same year, the year following, the 9/11 event had Jupiter exactly conjunct Varuna in that 9/11 chart, bringing that whole consciousness into worldwide view.
So they turn it around instead of like us, because they've always, those planets and planetoids and whatever is out there, that's always been there.
Yeah.
We just discovered it, but they're making themselves known to us.
Yes, because the human race is now ready to become more consciously aware of that state of being. It's just a signal.
And it seems
Go
like
ahead.
phenomenally protective and amazing that Alma's touring in the U.S. right now. She's doing David Barber right now.
Oh, right, the Divine Mother. There you go.
Yeah, the Divine
Perfect.
Mother, who's
Exactly.
Kali,
Perfect.
and she's also Durga, but who's absolute presence of divine love. And I
Mhm.
think that's holding something amazing for the United States right now.
Yeah.
It wouldn't be stable without that.
And the quintessential expression of cancer, the mother, is giving somebody a hug. That's totally Amma. It's like,
Yeah.
you're welcome. You're embraced. Yeah. That's.
As well as a transmission.
So if you're Scorpio,
Yeah.
give them a kiss of death.
The cancer grab. It's when you give somebody a hug, you're not pinching them. You're actually embracing them. So it's a whole different energy. Yeah. But thank you for bringing that up.
Yeah.
It's true. Glenn, did you have something to add?
Yeah, I'm a Neptune in Pisces. Best time in 168 years
Right.
to have that divine mother coming through.
Mm-hmm.
Also, the Neptune-Pluto cycle, where Pluto comes inside of Neptune for 20 years at a time.
Right.
And through history, that's always been in a flowering of enlightenment.
Right.
And we're finally nearing the end of Neptune sextile Pluto.
Mm-hmm.
I think we've had it for
Yeah.
like 60 years or something like that.
Yeah.
And within 20 years, it's going to be square.
Right.
The opening square from Neptune to Pluto. So.
Yeah. It's called the long sextile
Yeah.
because Neptune and Pluto actually reached the sextile, which is an opportunity phase, in the 50s. But then because Pluto has a very elliptical orbit, travels very fast at a certain point close to the sun, it went back into septile aspect to Pluto through the late 90s. And then now we'll re-enter the sextile phase starting in the 2020s again, as it was in the 1950s and 60s, offering great opportunity, and then, as Glenn said, we'll then quickly square each other. So this is a window of opportunity here that bridges between the 60s and the 20s. Yeah, and Neptune being in Pisces, 165-year synodic cycle. being squared by Jupiter as we speak, creating a what's called a hammer of Thor to Varuna, which I mentioned earlier, in Leo. So as Mars enters Leo on July 1st, that first week of July, Mars will activate that hammer of Thor conjunct Varuna. And it'll be right during the celebrations of the 4th of July, which is a perfect symbol of the fireworks flying. So you might just be feeling really called to party hard and really show up big and bright and beautiful and celebrate life itself with Mars entering Leo and enjoying the experience of celebrating who you are, this new solar fire that's beginning to emerge, and then will amp up in frequency and brilliance as the sun then enters Leo on July 22nd. So this period between now and the beginning of July is most likely the most emotionally steamy time, because Mars in Cancer can feel like the pot is just boiled over.
What is the time of the solstice next week?
Um,
On which day?
21st.
so on the
Friday.
21st,
Friday?
that's next week from today, and it's exact at 8:54 a.m. And on that very day, Neptune will be exactly going stationary retrograde. So time to get high.
I bet a lot of people will get high and be dropping their bodies, so.
Yeah, the issues of right relationship to your livelihood and feeling safe, secure, and welcomed by the community you're in are really being highlighted now. I know, some of my friends that really have an issue, which is staying alive and surviving, providing for themselves. And that is an issue that's really being brought into great focus over the next couple of years as new models and ways of community well-being are brought onto the table, so that we can find a way to live one with another and support one another in new ways. Yeah. So, any other comments or questions? Yeah, I was mentioning the Jupiter squaring Neptune. They're both in their own signs. Jupiter's in Sagittarius. Neptune's in her own sign. Here's another example of my evolving an old Roman archetype. I consider Neptune a goddess rather than a god. And the Jupiter's in its fourth, third quarter square to Neptune, which is his natural relationship to Neptune. And new models or ways of expanding our awareness and understanding the nature of reality are challenging the old religions. That's why the dramatic play of the Christian right and those who are locked or embedded within religious thinking being challenged by new models of being in the world that are more inclusive, expansive, and international in nature. They're no longer just bound to our personal loyalty to tribe or country. And that's Jupiter squaring Neptune is one of those expressions of that we are all global citizens. So we can imagine that that's going to be more and more so emphasized as an opportunity for the human race to transcend their loyalties to tribe and nation and begin recognizing their common humanity. And Mother Earth may have a part to play in that by erasing boundaries when these global events like a hurricane occur or a tsunami. They don't recognize international or national boundaries. They just sweep in and unify us all in rising to meet the opportunity to work together. And that's a big part of the initiation cycle we may be facing over the next few years.
It was interesting that a lot of places in the country, that a lot of the hardcore churches are coming out to the pride parades.
Nice.
Big signs, we're sorry. Didn't get it.
Really?
You know.
Boy, I didn't see
Just,
that.
really,
Yeah.
we're totally sorry. And trying to, can we hug you? Can we eat a grape?
Yeah.
It's amazing.
Wow.
Sweet. Yeah, it's coming
In the
home.
south?
To follow up on what you said about connecting to the global family
Yeah.
with this square, I was feeling all week long, looks like the prime time for total galactic revelation that we're a galactic society.
Mm-hmm.
Our brothers and sisters from the stars showing up
Right.
this summer.
They're already here, brother.
I know they are, but.
They're just walking around in disguise.
We've been here for decades.
Maybe they are on this stage, who knows?
Well, okay, I'll close with this. And as a counterpoint to the star person invasion from above, Uranus and Taurus is the equal counterpart of the emergence of the nature spirit kingdom in the human form. I was made aware of this like in 1996 by hanging out with a nature spirit in human form connected to Native American ceremony. I watched how the Native American ceremonies drew the nature spirits to the edge of their fire, to their dancing, and got them fascinated with the human experience and motivated them to take human form. And Uranus and Taurus is the awakening of that nature spirit connection, of those nature spirits and elementals who have taken human form, as a counterpart to the star people who may not be from planet Earth. The nature spirit kingdom is an integral part of the heart of the rhythm of Mother Earth, revealed most dramatically through indigenous tribal ceremony, like drumming and sweat lodge, that creates the counterbalance to the star person invasion of those who are emphasizing the higher chakras. The nature spirit kingdom doesn't emphasize the lower chakras, but celebrates them, because that is their connection to the human experience. So we're finding this new human heart emerging as the center ground within which the Star Nation and the Earth Nation beings are meeting to make peace with one another through the power of love itself. And that's something I've been watching occurring gradually over the last 20, 30 years, particularly with the emergence of the hippies running naked in the woods. So on that note, any other comments or questions? With that?
Well, thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.